All right, we'll pick up with officers now in part 2 of chapter 40. The officers, they are hired by the board of directors, and I've abbreviated board of directors here with a B/D. And the officers, what they're supposed to do is to supervise the day-to-day operations. So they report, the officers all report to the board of directors. Mainly that would be the president who has to answer to the board. The officers, of course, are compensated. They are paid a salary, and officers are the authorized agents for the corporation. All right, now we have seen this before. This is not new to you. The officers, we usually talk about this in connection with officers, but actually both directors and officers have the two duties that we have mentioned when we discussed partnership. Those two duties are the duty of care, and the second one is the duty of loyalty. All right, the duty of care, this is familiar to you. This means that both directors and officers are supposed to act in good faith. Each should exercise the care of an ordinarily prudent person who is in the same or similar circumstances, and generally it means to act in the best interest of the corporation. In order to fulfill the duty of care, an officer and a director should stay informed of corporate matters, make reasonable decisions, exercise reasonable supervision over whoever they are supervising, so lower level management employees, line worker employees, all right, and if required to, the officers should attend and participate in the board of director meetings. All right, the second duty is the duty of loyalty, and this means that the officer and directors should place the corporation's interests ahead of their own personal interests. It means they should not use the corporation's information for their personal gain or their personal profit. Neither the officer or directors should engage in self-dealing without full disclosure to the board. And I didn't write it down here, but in addition to fully disclosing the conflict or the self-dealing that will occur, the officer, the director should not participate in the decision-making that's connected with such transaction. And then the third point here, to see the officer or director, in order to fulfill their duty of loyalty, should not compete with the corporation. All right, I want to go over an example, a case in which these two duties came up. All right, so the case is Guth versus Loft. This is a classic case in your textbook, and I'm going to go out to it now in your textbook just so you can see where it is in the textbook. So let me close out. All right, wrong screen. Let me change screens. Here we are. This is the Guth versus Loft case. I'm going to scroll down a bit to get a bit of the facts up here, background and facts on the screen, and we're going to talk about it, summarize it, so you have a good example of a person, in this case Charles Guth, who had a conflict of interest. All right. Now Guth is the president of Loft Inc., which is a candy and a restaurant chain, and he, along with his family, also owned another company called Grace, which made a syrup for soft drinks. Now, Loft had a license with Coca-Cola, and that's the company that Guth worked for, but Guth thought that Coke cost too much, was charging them too much. So he orchestrated a deal with Pepsi, but Grace didn't have the money to finance that deal, all right? And Grace is the company he owns with his family. So Guth, without permission of the Loft board, that's his employer, used Loft's assets to finance the deal with Pepsi. Guth instructed Loft, which is the company he works for, to manufacture the initial Pepsi syrup before being sent over to Grace for additional ingredients. There was no credit arrangements. There was credit arrangement, that favored Grace. And when Loft finally caught up with this and sued Guth, he argued he had no conflict of interest. However, I think you can pretty much see that here he is operating as the president of one company and using its assets to benefit his privately owned company. Yeah, there's basically a conflict of interest there. And the court agreed. The court said that Guth controlled Loft and he controlled this deal with Pepsi. And here he is in conflict with his company that he works for. And he took a business opportunity that should have been Loft's, and he took it and benefited himself personally. All right, it's an old case you see in 1930 when the events occurred, and the decision was issued in 1939. All right, it's a long-standing case, a very clear example for you of what we're talking about. Now, I'd like to continue, and I'm sorry I have to keep turning away like this, but I have different screens on different angles, and I have not solved that yet. I want to take a look at a couple of problems, just again, to walk through what we're looking at here. So these are two business scenario problems. There's problem number 1, which deals with Oxy Corp. All right, and Oxy Corp has been working on a deal with a company called Wick Construction. Wick, who's the owner of Wick Construction, is also one of the 5 members of Oxy's board of directors. The contract terms are standard in the contract. Wick has previously informed 2 of the other directors of his interest in the construction company. Oxy's board approves the contract by a 3-2 vote, with Wick voting with the majority. All right, so discuss whether this contract is binding on the corporation, or is there going to be a problem? All right, so based on what we just discussed, I think you can see that there's going to be a problem here, right? Do you see the conflict of interest that Mr. Wick has? He is on the board of Oxy, and he's the owner of Wick, who wants to make a deal with Oxy. All right. Now, he has disclosed, but he has not disclosed fully. He only disclosed to 2 of the 4 remaining directors. So it's it's an incomplete disclosure, and the deal got the approval of the board. What should Wick have done here? Wick should have disclosed fully to all 4 remaining directors, and he should have abstained on the vote on the contract, and then let the other 4 decide whether to take the deal with Wick Construction. All right, so you can see how the law is applied in this situation. We're going to take a look now at problem 40-2. All right, 40-2, let me read through it with you.